I'll just briefly introduce Marisa, who many of you know, but some of you don't. That's Tommaso. Welcome back, Tommaso. We're just starting now. I've just explained the housekeeping rules, and I was just about to introduce Marisa, and then I'll introduce you. So Marisa Garreffa, wave Marisa, that's her, yes, is Australian, and she's been living in Florence for 7 or 8 years, I think. 8 years. She's a performance artist. She's a counselor and coach. She's an arts manager. And she's beginning to collaborate with myself and my team here at the British Institute of Florence to create our new program called Assessore alla, which just started before COVID closed us down a year ago, a bit more than a year ago. We've done our first 3 or 4 weeks. Assessore alla is a space. It's our downstairs room on the Lungano, Sala Lungano. And it's also a concept which is to create space in the city for contemporary creative activity of all different kinds, usually with an international flavor, and encouraging the younger and emerging creative players, artists, entrepreneurs, whatever, to realize projects and do things. So Assessore alla is a concept which we've trialed and has been suspended for a year, but we're certainly going to relaunch with vigor in the autumn. So that's Marisa, and she's my partner in developing a lot of that. Tommaso Sacchi, welcome Tommaso, Assessore alla Cultura for the Comune di Firenze. Translated in English means head of the culture department of the city government. Well known to many of us, a real breath of fresh air in Florence for his energy and his approach to cultural life and enrichment in Florence. And so the structure of the evening is that Marisa and I myself are going to engage Tommaso in conversation around the general theme of how do we enable a stronger and more vital contemporary creative scene in Florence. And then as we go along, I would welcome all of you to join in. Those in the room can stand up and shout or wave at me. Those on the Zoom and in the Facebook Live, as I say, communicate with us through the chat. So if I may, Tommaso, just to get us started, I just want to say a few words to frame this. Last autumn, British Institute of Florence, with a considerable amount of collaboration with the Comune at the time, put together a series of roundtables around the theme of the future of Florence. And out of that, we got a lot of exciting ideas about how to realize a vision of a new Florence emerging on the other side of the pandemic, which is a green and sustainable city, an intelligent and smart city, and also a creative city, featuring a strong international education scene, powerful and stimulated knowledge economy, a new approach to tourism and visitors, looking at the concept of smaller volume, higher quality tourism, people staying for longer. I know the Comune have put out a really interesting program called Be Long, the idea that if you stay longer, if you are longer in Florence, then you will belong to the city. And that's a direction of travel we think is very exciting. And we're doing some work with Cecilia Del Rey's department on that at the moment as well. And so this vision of a new Florence to emerge is really exciting. And we wanted to place this evening's work very much in that context. Because if you're going to have a smarter, more creative, sustainable city, which is a great place to live in for the residents, both the permanent and long-term residents, but also the temporary residents who are visiting for a few weeks and a few months, then you need to ensure that it's a vital and living city, and not going down the road of the lagoon at Venezia, of becoming essentially a Disneyland of heritage. And so that brings us to this theme tonight, because my contention, my challenge would be that a contemporary, living, sustainable, creative, intelligent city needs to have a strong contemporary creative scene at its heart. That is the stuff that makes it all the other things and sustains it in the long haul, even if it doesn't immediately produce direct incomes. And as an older person in this company, I will tell you my backstory, which was when I was fresh out of university, I came to Florence at the invitation of the then director of the British Institute of Florence, and lived here for 3 years. And during that time, as well as teaching English at Ely British, I created a small experimental theatre company in the city. And at that time, which is the late 70s, early 80s, Florence was one of the best places in the world to be exploring with contemporary experimental theatre. The place was alive. The north wing of the Palazzo Pitti had a black box theatre, and every week there was a new radical, iconoclastic, crazy piece of theatre being presented there. The famous Polish director, Tadeusz Kantor, was in residence at the Teatro Goldoni, making some of his most important work. I remember Teatro La Mama from New York City doing a radical intervention on Piazza Ognissanti outside the French Institute, etc., etc. It was a very exciting, very vibrant international creative hub. Coming back to Florence nearly 40 years later, I find that that energy isn't so easy to find. That kind of vibrant, challenging, radical, experimental, iconoclastic creativity is much less easy to find. There's a great deal of wonderful, fabulous, important heritage from the Renaissance and after. There's some extremely good upscale theatre and music and exhibitions happening at Palazzo Strozzi, at the Pergola, the Maggio Musicale. There's blockbusters coming through the Nelson Mandela Foundation Forum. But the space for the smaller, more edgy, more experimental, more emerging kind of creativity is not so evident. And so the theme for this evening is really to explore what that might be. So that's my opening statement. And if I like my question almost, Tommaso, because I'm interested in how you would respond to my analysis at the start.
Well, first of all, Simon and Marisa, I would like to thank you so much for this invitation to have a talk and to have the possibility of a dialogue on this well, very challenging topic of the relationship between the Florence of the past and the big Florence of the Renaissance and the Florence of today. And also, if I may, I'm really thankful for the opportunity of doing another step forward, that is rethinking the Florence of the future, meaning the Florence that will come after the disaster, the global disaster of the pandemic COVID-19. I think that in the introduction of Simon Gammell, there is something that has a lot to do with my job of the pre-pandemic and my job of the post-pandemic that will definitely change. Unfortunately, the pandemic hasn't finished yet, and we are in the middle of it, and so we have to do everything possible to be also in the cultural production and organization as much safe as possible in order to avoid any case of more contagious opportunity of the virus to get through from person to person. So, but what I wanted to focus on is exactly this idea of a city that you were mentioning a lot of important events of the past, when Florence has been a very contemporary city. And if I may, I also want to say that during the Renaissance, Florence was the most contemporary scene all over the world, globally speaking, because can you imagine a city in which the dome of the cathedral that is so incredibly oversized in respect to all the architecture of the times, because it's something that Brunelleschi made with a dose of talent and genius that today would maybe never be allowed an architect to even to project, to design such an incredible architecture in the middle, in the heart of a city, of the cultural capital of Italy, and maybe also of Europe, as Florence is. So Florence has always had this attitude to be in the present, to be on the contemporary level of arts, of debate, of intellectual debate, of criticism, of, I mean, political debate as well, because we never have to forget about the story of the Medici family and what it represented. And of course, more recently, we have to think about the fact that Florence has been also the capital of Italy for a few years, instead of Rome, that is now our capital city, with the parliament installed in the middle of the Salone 500 in Palazzo Vecchio. So can you imagine another era, also politically speaking, because everything was happening in Florence, and that was not the 16th century. So from, I mean, every sometimes Florence is able to be the city of the present and the city of a Renaissance, not only the Renaissance. And so that's the why we are, well, there is this kind of linguistic abuse of the new Renaissance, you know, is a mantra that from time to time comes out in the debate, in the political debate, in the cultural debate. So we are at, you know, we are approaching a new Renaissance starting from Florence. But I think it's also interesting to think and to deeper analyze what it means, because Florence is a city that has on its shoulders the heavy weight of the past. That is such a privilege for a touristic and cultural city as Florence is, because to never forget that Florence is the city of, I mean, 13, 14 million tourists every year. Of course, apart from the pandemic year, there is something else from those numbers. But I mean, it's a city in which the city tax, to give you just a proportion, can achieve 42, 43 million euros in the public finances. That is missing, by the way, in this horrible year. And so we decided, as the last governments of the city decided, me, myself, my colleagues, the mayor, decided to invest those money coming from tourism in cultural services, in infrastructures like the tramway, that is a revolution. Also, is itself the new tramway lines are a kind of contemporary page of the book of the history of a city like Florence, because there is not only the culture meaning of being contemporary, but it's also it can also be read in terms of infrastructure and how livable a city is, with an ecological and cheap and fast way of connecting the city from one side to the other. So that's also one of the pages of the contemporary book of Florence. But what I want to point, and what I want to tell our friends that are following our conversation, is how we decided to invest in the contemporary art field, how we decided to try this big challenge of proposing and giving a hand to the international global community of artists from every field, from performance arts we had the opportunity to host Marina Abramovic, just to be clear, to Anthony Gormley, amazing English artist that we love because he made something that was dedicated to Florence in a very site-specific way, like the exhibition of those iron human figures up on the hill of the Forte Belvedere, as you for sure remember, when more than 100 humans, let's say, were, leaving the amazing park of Forte Belvedere. Or I could mention the zodiacs on the facade of the inflatable boats that remind us on the tragedy of the migrations in the sea of Ai Weiwei, this Chinese artist who was putting them on the facade, on the Renaissancemental facade of Palazzo Strozzi, that was so iconic in, also politically speaking. And that was Florence, that is Florence. Because what we are doing, and I go back to what I was saying previously, is to strongly invest on the possibility and the opportunity for global, bigger or not big or not big, also mid-career artists and also emerging artists to be in Florence, to do what? To have the privilege and the opportunity to dialogue with the past. So that's a way, that's a very key point of the politics of these years, of the way we are approaching the public policies on culture, like moving from the idea of a city of the past to the idea of a city that has a very, very important and relevant past, that is made of Michelangelo, that is made of Brunelleschi, that is made of Vasari, and I could continue for a long, long list. But moving from the idea of only relying on the past also in terms of cultural tourism, to the idea of relying on the past, but also giving the possibility to the contemporary scene of artists to have a very generative and important and positive dialogue. It is not always an easy dialogue with Piazza Signoria, with Palazzo Vecchio, with Forte Belvedere, or with Museo Novecento or Palazzo Strozzi, but it's a necessary dialogue. I think that the politics, and I don't come from the politics, I come from a curatorial background. That's maybe why I'm so, I have a strong passion on this level of collaboration with the global scene of arts. I strongly think, I was saying, that the politics and the people who has in their hands the possibility to decide where to drive a city, an important global recognized city of arts like Florence, we have the responsibility also to stimulate and to continue the debate, the intellectual, debate on art, and also the artistic research of today, through the possibility of a dialogue that is so important for artists, but also for the public, for people who come to Florence and see that in Piazza Signoria there can be a Pluto and Proserpina by Jeff Koons. That is a very, particular artist of our time, one of the stars, of course. But he decided to have a dialogue and to have an approach with the David in front of Palazzo Vecchio. And that's a crash, is an encounter that gives something to contemporaneity. So basically we are, and I'm gonna end up with my first thoughts about what you very properly, Simon, were introducing. What we are basically doing is to generate something that can be in the book of the history of the city, as something that is added by the scene of international artists in the dialogue, in the very important and site-specific dialogue with the city like Florence.
Yeah, Tommaso, when I was preparing for this, I did a lot of interviews with the international community, also the local community, a lot of people from different festivals, performers, theater makers, and something really unusual happened for my time here in Florence. Everybody really likes you. And this doesn't happen often. When we talk about our leaders, when we talk about especially our cultural leaders in Florence, in all of my years here, I haven't heard this kind of positivity, this kind of optimism. And there is an optimism, and I think that's incredibly important because it does feel like we are at a moment right now where an opportunity is opening and we don't want to blow it. So when I looked at the Firenze NOW report that everybody put together, the first thing I noticed was I'm always looking for the gaps. I'm a performance artist. I come from that radical, awkward end of the arts world where Marina is the only one who will get a gallery. I was looking for what are the gaps. And I think what we see here is that we have beautiful, incredible, large-scale work. We have very important artists coming and having important conversations. We have art spaces that pop up, they go really well, the values rise, and then they move on and become property, and the artists are moved on. Everybody in this room who's watching live are people who have faced that, faced those challenges, and said, I'm going to create something anyway. And a lot of them have gone to the periphery to do it. A lot of them are working in Prato, in Pistoia, around the periphery, because what I really see that is missing in the center is space for experimentation, not just for hosting international dialogues, but seeding them. People in this room have been here for years, even decades, and a conversation gets better over time. It deepens. It starts to enter some strata that become much more interesting. And I'm very interested in making spaces where a long discussion over years can happen, where a cultural hub can create a strategy that's not 5 years, that's 10 or 20 years, and starts to see generations of artists having cross conversations. Simon and I, we have constant little struggles because we go a little bit upstairs, downstairs. I'm like, I want to get the library out of downstairs. Let us play. Let us take risks. Let us experiment. Let us make a mess. Let us make noise. I just demanded the window onto the street to make a performance because I saw a space. But I'm in a rare moment that I was able to see a space because Simon opened one in one of the oldest institutions of foreign institutions that exists in Florence. So something I'm very interested in is how can we look at that missing dedication of long-term spaces. In Florence, we see that a lot of the radical culture is added on to bars or discos or the pub. You get culture thrown in as a side to your cocktail. We don't have dedicated contemporary cultural spaces, or they're in the periphery. And we need to find ways to bring them in, to create movement between, looking for collaboration, not competition between venues, so that venues are working together and sending work between, which is something we want Soto to become, a point of movement of peripheral venues, because it's rare to have a space on the Arno where you can make that work. So the gap that I really see is the gap of risk-taking. It is the risk that sometimes that work might be rubbish. It might be crap, but we need that because as the alchemists know, it's from that heaviest material that we're going to find the gold, but we need to make space for those radical experiments to happen. And this is what really interests me, because when I looked in the Firenze NOW report, the only thing it mentioned about culture was the artigiani culture, which is very important. But what about culture that is not an object for sale, that cannot be collected, but has to be experienced? How do we make spaces for more contemporary experiences that are not linked to getting drunk, that are not linked to getting on a tour bus and hooning around, but actually having an experience and a space for culture and for questioning and a longer conversation.
Thank you, Marisa. It's well, I want to really go deeper into what you were saying, because I think it's the natural prosecution of what we stated before. So we're pushing on the direction of a contemporary scene. Okay, we are inviting and hosting, as you were saying, international artists from all over the world. But I want to, well, of course, there is much to do. So the first, the postulate, what I'm certain about is that when you are on the position of a deputy mayor with a delegated for culture, fashion design, and the international relations of the city, as that's my assignment, for these 5 years. There is always, unfortunately, something that you cannot explore properly and you would love to. So politics is always a mediation between what you want to do and what you can do with the tools you have in your hands, meaning sometimes money, but it's not only a matter of finances, meaning space. There are cities, also my colleagues, that are not that privileged in giving high quality space to a generation of art, a generation of artists from all the fields of art, meaning a matter of competencies and how good is your team and the people you work with. I don't want to go too far, but I think that there's always a mediation. There's always a kind of deal between what you desire to do. I've got a lot of energy, and I know where my goal is. Well, most times I know where my goal and what's the result I want to achieve, and not always I'm able to go there. But I want to mention a couple of things in the direction you are asking about, you're talking about. First, to get to the goal of involving a cultural contemporary community in a very historical city like Florence, I think the recipe is made of different aspects, of different ingredients. First, spaces. We have been working very strongly, and not only us, because Milano has done it maybe some years in advance also, because it's a different morphology, different history. Is the city where I come from, so I know it very well, and I served the city of Milano as a head of the cultural cabinet of an Assessore. At the time was Stefano Boeri, the architect, the Italian architect who was in charge of the culture as a deputy mayor. And I know very well the city, and what I'm saying about space, that is the first point I want to deeper analyze in my answer, in my talk. Milano has done a lot, because in the urban regeneration, that is one of the most interesting and unavoidable aspect of the nowadays politics in the major cities of Italy. Milano has done a lot, but what we have done on urban regeneration is we've been able to work also in the direction of creating, and we will do it better in the next future, and I will tell you why. We've been able to work on what I call them informal spaces. So the spaces in which, and also we can call them institutions, because I'm relating to, and I'm thinking about Manifattura Tabacchi, for instance, when I'm talking, and I see there are some friends from Connecticut, for instance, but I'm pretty sure there are friends also from Florence who know what Manifattura Tabacchi is. Is it just for the people from who do not live in our city? It used to be an industry, is a very industrial, post-industrial space designed by a very important Italian architect who was an engineer, who was Pierluigi Nervi, the same architect who worked on the Stadio di Firenze, on the stadium, on the public stadium, who is considered a very important, figure of the rationalism in architecture. And this huge quarter of Florence has been bought by a private, but the private company who hold it, who has it in the properties, started a dialogue that for me is is compulsory, because I could never think about a new district like that hasn't a cultural destination, in a sense. So we started a dialogue with the new property of a very big new headquarters of the city, to build up common public spaces for art, for production of art, for residency program, to host and to welcome artists from all over the world. To do what? Not to bring their art in order to be displayed, to be shown, as you were saying, hosting the artist's production, but producing art and stimulating the production of art on site. That's a very important aspect of what Manifattura Tabacchi today is. And I wanted to mention it to say how important it has been in a city like ours to invest on the regeneration of public space. I'm working now, for instance, in the district of Novoli, that is not the very center of Florence, but I mean, with the new tramway that I was mentioning before, is really 15-20 minutes from the center, with the Fiat, that is the car industry, the Italian car industry, that used to be that used to produce cars in that area, and now has been given to the city. And the city, myself as a deputy mayor for culture, and together with my colleagues and the mayor, are working on a new informal space. I would love to have the possibility to host artists from different scenes in a space. It's a kind of a golden tower in the middle of this Novoli quarter. And that's the second mention I wanted to do. But so first of all, spaces. We have reopened and regenerated an average of 2.53 big spaces, big institutions also, because I could mention in the series in the last 5 years, I could mention, for instance, Museo Novecento. It was not that big, was not that, first of all, it was opened and renewed not more than 7 years ago. So it's quite a new, is one of the latest museums open in our city. I could mention a very central, you were talking about, I was very interested in what you said, Marisa, that is the mentioning of the central area of Florence, like getting to the very center of the city as an artist, and to have a dialogue, as I was saying before, not only because you give a show, because you display a show of your masterpieces, and you are a big star, as names as I mentioned, like Jeff Koons, Marina Abramovic, Ai Weiwei, and so on. It's a necessity to have them, but it's also very important, and I will get to the big challenging project of Santa Maria Novella that I think you know, Marisa, and Simon knows, how we are investing on this big quarter of Santa Maria Novella. I think it's about 25,000 square meters in which we will give space to artists to display and to work on site on their new productions, and in which there will be the possibility to install a stage for contemporary dance, in which, and that's the place where the cartoon of Battaglia di Anghiari was conceived, was designed, was made. So it's a place that tells the story of humanity in a sense. So we are relaunching it, mixing up the level of residency with the community of artists for dance, for artist studios and so on. And at the same time, in the same district, there will be the new Museo della Lingua Italiana, the museum of our language, Italian language. So to say that the first point is to open up the space, to renew the space, thinking about the community of arts. And now that the pandemic is still on, we have to think how the artists of our country has suffered, stopping their production, not being on a stage for 15 months, and with them all the technicians who, talking about performing arts, all the technicians who make the show possible. There is a huge community in Italy. Just to give you a number, we're talking about more or less 7,000 workers of the field of live performing arts. So second, we have to give the opportunity, sorry to be a little bit long, but I think it's on track. So to give the opportunity through public finances. And not only, because I think that the perfect mix is finances, space, already mentioned, and also a drive to give a direction in which we wanna go. And I'm thinking about Estate Fiorentina, for instance. Estate Fiorentina, it is summer in Florence, the summer festival of Florence. I've been the curator of this festival for many years, even before my role as a Assessore. And we have turned it, interpreting the big opportunity of such a festival, we've turned it into something else than what it was before. Because first of all, we have tripled the money we give to the public, to the cultural associations. So it's a public opportunity we give to cultural association, and now it is more or less €1 million we give to them to produce something for the city, and to produce something for the city also in terms, not only because there is this peculiar aspect of work of stimulating production in the peripheries of the city and also in the very center. For instance, we have made something that is much loved by the citizens of Florence and also by some international guests, is the open-air cinema in the middle of the Galleria degli Uffizi, of the Uffizi galleries. What does it mean? It means to have a public free cinema. You don't have to pay a coin for that. And you are in the middle of the art of the past of Florence. I mean, between Piazza Signoria and the two arms of the Uffizi galleries, overlooking or looking towards the Arno River. I mean, it has been defined last year, the previous year, in 2019, it has been defined the most charming and beautiful cinema all over the world, because of course we are. But why I'm saying that? Because, and there are also international movies in original language. So that's also an opportunity for the English-speaking community or French-speaking when the movies are in French or Spanish when it's from that part of the world, the cinema, the movie. But I mean, apart from the movies, this is an opportunity to let the community of festivals, that is a very relevant community, in my opinion, of the Cinema Festival of Florence, to curate, to approach, and to art direct this big cinema in the middle. And that's just one mention I could do among the more than 750 events of a city like ours. Last thing, but not least, is to push a little bit on the direction, and I wanted to do that in the next I have 3.5 more years, so then it's finished. I mean, my assignment as a deputy culture. I want to work and invest on residency programs. Why that? Because, well, I do remember when the Mayor Nadella and myself invited Hans-Ulrich Obrist, the curator of the Serpentine Galleries in London, and Hans-Ulrich came to Florence to have a dialogue with the artistic community at the time. It was 2015, if I am right. So it was already six years ago. And Hans-Ulrich, when I asked him, what do you think about Florence? I mean, it's not intended to be a contemporary art capital compared to, of course, Berlin, London, and Paris, for instance. What do you think we could do? I mean, you quite know the shape of the city. You quite know the opportunities that. And Hans-Ulrich said something like, Florence is a city where you can explore and where you can approach the extreme contemporary, right? Because because the city itself is the city of past. It's a city that can be an amazing trampoline for a new trajectories, new ideas on the contemporary art level. And when he was saying the extreme contemporary, I remember this expression, he was also referring to the idea of investing on residencies for young and new, fresh artists from all over the world, all over Europe. So to say that what I want to do is, first of all, I'm working with our technical department to enlarge the Novecento Museum, the Museo del Novecento, with a series of apartments to host museum directors, artists, curators, so the community. Because I think that the museum of the future, so the institution of the third millennium, in a sense, after the COVID-19 pandemic, must be a live place, a live body, a live place that can generate something that can, I mean, irradiate in the veins of the city with positivity, with an approach that comes and a site that can come from the international community of arts and must be live. It's the time, in a sense, the time of the institution that are only suitable for vertical exhibitions. I use this expression to say the normal exhibition of frames, all over the museum is finished. The museum must be live. So that's why we are installing residencies. That's why we are doing live performances in the museums that once used to be the museums of visual art and could not be intended as museums that host live performing arts. Now, Museo Novecento, I want to use this example to mention also other, because I could say Palazzo Vecchio, in which we are doing performances and theater, and also performance art that is something apart from theater. I mean, you Marisa could tell us much more about this aspect. But and of course, Palazzo Strozzi, I could mention, where the courtyard is used as a stage also to host performances from all over the world as well. But I mean, I think now it is the necessity is to redesign the role, the key role of the institutions in a city like Florence. And I'm very happy that Ursula von der Leyen said some days ago, a new renaissance can come out from Florence, from a city like Florence. That was something really, really relevant. I mean, in front of many prime ministers and political relevant figures of our country, of our continent, and from all over the world, to say that for us is very encouraging. Is very important for us. This political statement, that's something real, true in what the president said.
Thank you so much, Tommaso. Such a lot of very interesting ideas there. As a former theatre maker, Florence is one great stage. I mean, as I wander around, I see theatrical opportunities at every corner. So I recognise what you're talking about. How much time have you got with us, Tommaso? It's 10 to 7. Can you stay a bit beyond the top of the hour, or are you on a hard stop? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry, I should go at 7.
Okay, in that case, without delay, I'm going to open it to the floor, and I'm going to privilege the people who are in the room. If any of you've got something you would like to bring in, I'm going to ask you to come and speak into my computer. So, and anyone who's on the Zoom or Facebook, please put something in the chat if you want it to be mentioned.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself.
Hi. Hi. We already know each other. I'm Victoria de Blasi. Nice to see you again. Nice to see you again. I don't know if I just look here, I guess. Oh, okay. I just have a quick question, only because I've been here for a long time, much like I think as long as Marisa as well. And I'm really interested in having more, obviously, artist residency programs in Florence, but particularly as an artist, I've done a lot of artist residencies in other cities as well. And I was particularly impressed by the artist residency in Barcelona called Hengar. And the thing that really is interesting for me about it is that they have various programs, various things going on. But one of the most interesting things that I wanted to talk about is they have studio spaces that the government subsidizes and gives to the artists for like 200 euros a month, so super cheap and affordable, and they're big spaces, and it's like just in a warehouse. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. And so basically it's divided into like 2 categories. So there are artist residencies that happen that are like studio spaces that they give to artists for like a year or 2 years that live in the city. And then they have these international programs that come in too. So I think that that would be really interesting, so that we're incorporating, so that there's a contaminazione, as you say in Italian, between, you know, people who live in Florence and then international artists coming in as well. So I think that that could be also interesting. I think that Manifattura Tabacchi is like getting there, but I think that like something like this would be interesting as well. And I was obviously one of the international artists that went there during the summer, and they had it like subsidized also for us as well. So I paid like less for being housed there and having a studio. Anyways, I thought that that would be interesting for Florence as well.
Before you answer, Tommaso, I'm going to see if there's anybody else who wants to put a question or thought in.
And while Simon's asking, I just want to throw in, we're very, very conscious about that what is needed is space, money, and willpower. And as the international community of Florence, we understand that it's also very delicate to be asking for money from the government that needs to be sustaining and supporting Florence artists, people who are born and raised here. So we're very sensitive to that. So one of the financial models that we're working on for Soto is to, when we talk about the new Renaissance, we're thinking more about the new Renaissance from the angle of new patronage. How can we reach into the international community that lives here? There's a lot of money there that doesn't know where to go necessarily. And we want to develop programs also through Soto, where artists of multiple genres are given micro grants through this patronage, so that we draw from the international community to create a new pool of patron funding. They become patrons of the artists who are residents here, and we create moments of opportunity for meeting points between the Italian community and the international community. Because as we know, culture is not going to make money. We have to stop trying to make all culture make money. It doesn't work. This is why we have a gap in how we think about the cultural life of Florence. It's why we think too much about visitability instead of livability. We have forgotten livability. Livability doesn't make you big tourist dollars, but it sustains the actual blood that's flowing through the veins of Florence, which is the artists who stay here long term and create those longer conversations. So we want an alternative patron model that funnels money to those people and keeps them sustained.
Okay, Tommaso, we've got one more and then we'll let you speak. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Katie. I work on movies. And I've been in the States for 10 years, and I work on Life of Pi and with Martin Scorsese on Silence.
Speak a bit louder.
Louder.
Oh.
Big voice, Katie.
Sorry, with big voice.
Okay, so I'm a filmmaker that I've been in the States for 10 years, and I work on the movie Life of Pi, and I also did a movie with Martin Scorsese, Silence. Then I'm now here, and I know we've been talking about the international community, but I think in some way, as an international artist, in some way, like non-Italian artists, for us, the filmmakers, that is a collaboration. So we are not just looking for international filmmakers. We are also looking for local company. Like we're inspired by the local arts, by different logic, different narrations, different stories. And so it's not just a separation between the locals or the old and the new, like the old Italian cinemas or the modern cinemas, or the Oriental culture or the American Hollywood or the Bollywood, or there should be a fusion that when you talk about 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we can looking back and say there's another renaissance. Not just we are waiting for another Michael Bay's movie coming for the Six Underground and blow the whole cities off. And then when you look at it, you think that it doesn't make sense. It cannot be Siena and Florence together. And for me, as a foreigner, yes, I understand that this is a very American idea and you look gorgeous, which is also a promotion for the Florence. But I do not think Florence needs this kind of promotion. But I think Florence, as a filmmakers here, I would like to tell stories about the cities or about Toscana or with the filmmakers here and not just in Cinecittà or somebody send someone from London to here. And that's just what I want to say.
I think we're very near to the top of the hour. So, Tommaso, I'm going to let you respond to some of those different thoughts that are coming your direction. Good luck.
No, I think that there are so many. I mean, I receive a lot of inputs from you, so I'm really interested. I'm really interested in what you were saying, and also I would love to continue maybe next time, like programming in the next future, the possibility of doing a second event, live event, in which we talk about this. Things that there's a lot to do with my job, of course, but also with the life of a city like the one in which we live. So I think it's really important. I based my, I found my my work, my job on the social, I mean, approach and on the social dynamics that are so important to get to a point, in a sense. Well, financing, there's also a question about the percentage of the EU money that is coming to Italy, that is coming to Florence, to Florence's culture. And I cannot give you the precise number, but what I can say, and I'm happy to state that, is that a city like ours has an office for, it should be something more than normal, I know, but it's not all over the cities of Italy and Europe, to work on the European money coming through the bandi internazionali di finanziamento. And believe me, we're doing a good job. We could and we should do much better again. But I want to be positive. We're doing quite a good job also in terms of hosting the international events on a political level, of course. So we've been hosting the G20, we've been hosting the for culture, you remember, we've been hosting many relevant events like Unity in Diversity. That is, I know Miriam Zamparella is online now. She's been working on this project for several years, and now as a Assessore alle relazioni internazionali, I'm working on that. So, I mean, we have to grow on this level, and I think it's a big opportunity also to, and please feel free also to propose to the amministrazione pubblica, because I know there is also always sometimes, not always, this kind of distance through which you say, okay, I should tell the assessore about this opportunity, but no, who can? We'll have a lot to do. We will have a lot to think about, and so I'm not that kind of person. If there is a good challenge to do together, I'm happy to listen to an artist or to a citizen of our city that has an idea. So many times it happens that from the dialogue with somebody and something very important for us is generated. Then, sorry, I don't remember. Victoria said something, but I'm missing because
the hybrid model of residencies, where there's 50-50 between the actual residents of the city and the other 50% of residencies are for international guests.
That's a very good point and a good suggestion, also to create a mix-up, culturally speaking, and I mean an encounter, a meeting between culture, between practices, between researches, and I think this is very important. So on one hand, to help local scene, because somebody mentioned before the handcrafts, the artigiani fiorentini. I'm obsessed by the idea, because it's a necessity now, by the idea of helping handcrafts. In the center of Florence, there are 950 handcrafts, like 1,000 people. And now, because due to the pandemic, some of them are thinking about the possibility of, quitting the job and the social role in the city, because it is very, very much important. And we've done something important. For instance, when Dolce & Gabbana came for the big show, they decided to come to Florence, to dedicate to Florence the show for their collection. And Domenico Dolce strongly wanted to work with the handcrafts, the maestros of the artigianato fiorentino, and that was an opportunity. It was not enough to help, because it's just a fashion show that yes can be something, but we have to continue on the values, on the level of collaborations, for sure. But what Victoria was saying is very important. So to mix up, and she mentioned also the Hangar, that is a very good program, I know. I'm working with, well, I met in Paris the director. She's a woman, very strong woman with very good ideas. She's the curator of La Cité de Paris. That's another very, very important model of residency I want to work on. So I also asked her to to start a dialogue for the new residencies we are setting in our city. So I'm really sorry to leave. I have a meeting that started at 7 o'clock, but I hope this has been an hour. For me, it's been wonderful to have the opportunity to meet up some friends and to have a dialogue with friends that I didn't know, people who have in their heart Florence, but also who want to, to create a dialogue with the public administrations and who people at the local government of the city in a sense, also generate something that we still have to do. We are, I can promise this is a level of politics and investments we are really strongly and very seriously working on. So residencies, new spaces for cultural production, Estate Fiorentina, urban regeneration, and the districts of Novoli and Santa Maria Novella. I could mention, and of course the big thematic of the big topic of the public art installations that I want to continue on. I mentioned the big masters of Anthony Gormley, Jan Fabre, Jeff Koons, and so on. But I want to work on this level because I think that this is a city of a global debate, and we have to work in the direction of contemporary art and practices. But in a sense, profiting of the big advantage of having the possibility of a very generative dialogue with the past, only on the past. So thank you so much for this hour together. Thank you, Marisa and Simon. It's been wonderful, and all the other friends who's been with us. Thank you.
And well, thank you, Tommaso. I will let you go, but I wanted to thank you for giving us this time and to assure you that the British Institute of Florence, as Florence's international cultural centre, is with you at the Comune in your department all the way on this journey. We are creating this new space downstairs with this program Sotto al British, which can be a hub for some of this right here on the Lungano. And we look forward to talking to you more, Tommaso, to you and your team about how we can work together to make some of these ideas and some of this vision, which is so compelling, really come true, both at the local level of individual artists, but also at the structural level of different models of funding and different ways of enabling space and promoting Florence as a contemporary creative city, as well as the magnificent Renaissance city. So thanks for that, and see you soon, I hope.
Thank you so much, for sure.
Bye for now, Tommaso.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you. And good night to everybody on the Zoom and following us on Facebook Live. I'm sorry we kept you quiet and you didn't get much of a word in edgeways, but I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And as I said, this is the start of a new journey for the British Institute of Florence with all our friends and partners across the city and around the world. So stick with the plan. And we'll see you all next time. Tomorrow night, for those who are following us regularly, we've got Sebastiano Baresi, who's the Chief Curator at the Henry Moore Foundation, talking to us about the story of Henry Moore and his special relationship with Florence. So not quite contemporary, but still quite modern. And so I'll wind it up on the Zoom now, and we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye. Take care.